You know, when we think about DNA, we usually picture these really complex diagrams in a science class, right? But what if I told you it's not just some abstract idea? It's a real physical thing, something you can actually see and even hold.
No, really, think about it for a second. Have you ever actually seen the fundamental instruction manual for a living thing? It sounds like something you'd only see in a futuristic movie or a super high-tech lab, right? Like a secret code that decides everything about us?
Well, guess what? You totally can. And the best part is, you don't need some fancy, expensive lab. Nope. All you really need is a few things you've probably already got lying around your house.
All right, so let's get our hands dirty. We're going to start with this incredibly simple experiment. And our star of the show, a regular old kiwi fruit. Seriously, in just a few minutes, we're going to literally pull its genetic code right out of its cells.
Okay, so this slide just lays it all out, and it's so much simpler than you'd think. First, you mash up the kiwi. That starts to break open the plant cells. Then you add salt and some dish soap, which, get this, basically dissolves the cell membranes, spilling everything out. After a little bit of heat and a quick filter, you pour in some chilled ethanol, and that's when things get really cool.
And bam, this is the payoff. See, DNA can't stay dissolved in ethanol, so it crashes out of the solution and clumps together. You'll start to see this stringy, gooey, whitish stuff appear right where the two liquids meet. And that right there is the kiwi's DNA. You've made the invisible visible. How cool is that?
So, okay, we've pulled this gunk out of a piece of fruit. It's a fantastic party trick for sure. But what is this stuff, really? Let's zoom in and figure out how this simple substance is actually the master blueprint for every living thing on Earth.
So its fancy scientific name is deoxyribonucleic acid, but we can just call it DNA. Think of it as the ultimate instruction manual, tucked away inside the nucleus of pretty much every single cell. This one molecule has all the information needed to build and run an entire organism.
And when I say it's a giant molecule, I mean it. It's what's known as a polymer, which is just a huge structure made by linking together tons and tons of smaller repeating units. And for DNA, those little building blocks are called nucleotides.
Now, each one of these tiny nucleotide blocks is made of 3 even smaller parts. You've got a sugar and a phosphate group. Those two team up to form the backbone of the molecule. And then you've got the really important part, one of 4 chemical bases, which we just call A, C, T, and G.
Now here is the secret sauce, the rule that makes the whole thing work. These bases have very strict pairing rules. A on one side will only ever connect with T on the other, and C will only ever pair up with G, no exceptions. That simple rule is the foundation of the entire genetic code.
So you end up with these 2 long strands, kind of like the sides of a ladder. And the rungs of that ladder are made up of those A, T, and CG pairs. Then, the whole thing twists on itself into that beautiful, iconic spiral staircase shape that we all know and love, the double helix.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly long ladder of information. Now get this, if you were to unravel the DNA from just one of your cells, it would stretch out to be about 2 meters long. So how on earth does all of that fit inside something completely microscopic? Well, it all comes down to some seriously efficient packaging.
Let's think of the entire DNA sequence as a massive cookbook. Well, a single gene is like one recipe in that book. It's a specific chunk of DNA that holds the instructions to make one specific thing, usually a protein, that then goes off and does a particular job in your body. Now, you can't just have thousands of recipes floating around randomly. So to keep them organized, that long DNA thread gets coiled up super tightly into these structures we call chromosomes. You can think of chromosomes as the chapters in our cookbook, each one holding hundreds or even thousands of genes. And if you put all of those chapters together, what do you get? The entire cookbook. That's the genome. It is the complete, entire set of genetic instructions for one organism. For us humans, that's all 23 pairs of our chromosomes, the whole shebang.
Okay, so having this incredible blueprint is one thing, but for life to actually continue, that blueprint has to be copied perfectly for new cells when we grow, and it also has to be passed on to the next generation. So how does life pull that off?
Well, our cells basically have 2 different copy machines. The first is called mitosis. Think of it like a perfect photocopier. It's for growth and repair, and it makes new cells that are identical clones. But then there's meiosis. This one's different. This process is just for making reproductive cells, like sperm and eggs, and these cells are not identical.
And this is why you're not a perfect clone of your parents. Meiosis shuffles the genetic deck. When a sperm cell and an egg cell combine, they bring together a unique mix of genes from both parents. The result is a brand new, totally one-of-a-kind genetic combination. You!
So we understand the structure, we know how it's copied and passed on, which is amazing, but what if we could just read the entire book of life, from page 1 all the way to the end? Well, that's not science fiction anymore. It's actually one of the greatest scientific quests of our lifetime.
You see, toward the end of the 20th century, scientists from all over the world teamed up for the Human Genome Project. The goal was absolutely monumental: to read and map every single letter in the human genetic code.
So how big is this book of life we're talking about? Get ready for it. 3 billion. That's billion with a B. 3 billion letters that contain the complete blueprint for making a human being. It's just mind-boggling.
But why go through all that trouble? What's the point? Well, the real power here is what this knowledge allows us to do. It lets us identify all of our genes, understand the genetic roots of diseases, and even predict how likely someone is to develop a certain illness. This is paving the way for a future of personalized medicine, where treatments can be designed just for you based on your own unique genetic code.
And that brings us to a final, pretty deep thought. We've gone from some gooey stuff in a kiwi to a 3 billion letter code that defines who we are. This knowledge gives us incredible power, but it also raises some really complex questions. So I'll leave you with this. If you could read your own genetic blueprint, what would you want to know? And maybe more importantly, what would you rather not?